Hi, business leadership students. Today we're actually going to talk a little bit about trait leadership. So by now I've already introduced a little bit about traits, and today we're going to look at what are the different types of leaders and how do traits interact and work along with those types of leaders to make sure they're successful. So the first thing that we're going to really talk about today is we're actually going to talk about leadership categories. So what are the different types of categories that you could be involved in if you're considered a leader? So some of those categories are going to be traits, power and influence, behavioral, situational, traditional, popularity, servant, or a combination of all of them, because sometimes you have a combination that kind of goes along with it. So the rest of the slideshow is really just defining what these different ones are. And then when we meet back in class, we'll talk a little bit more about how they interact within our business setting. The first one that we'll talk about is our servant leadership. Servant leadership is really, when you think about leadership, you have to have followers or you have to have a group in order to be a true leader. So leadership is that group phenomenon. There are no leaders without followers. So when we look at those leaders, they have to use influence to help guide those groups of people. Many times, the leader will help establish goals, guide them towards achievement, pick them up when they're down, walk them through different processes, etc., to really make it so they're able to be truly successful with what it is that they're doing. When we look at that trait leadership, one of the things that we look at, and I shared a video with you as well from YouTube, is looking at those traits and what those traits are really going to be looking at. John C. Maxwell wrote a book, and it's probably about 15 or so years old, but it talks about the indispensable qualities of a leader, and it really goes through and focuses on what are those great leadership qualities that we are going to have. And the next time we meet in class, we'll actually be able to dive into what those traits are. Why are they important for us as leaders? And what do they actually mean? But traits are those distinctive qualities. They're those characteristics that say, oh, that person has great communication skills. That could be a trait that they have, or they're passionate, or they're charismatic. Those are all parts of that trait leadership that makes us different than someone else that may be a leader as well. So sometimes we're really great at one thing, but maybe not as great at another. And those are all parts of those traits of who we are as a person. When we look at traits versus skills, skills are a little bit different. So skills are based on something that we're able to do. So traits kind of make up who we are. It's more of that personality side of us. Whereas skill is something that I or you could physically accomplish and do. So like I am a very skilled typist. So like I can type really fast and like I'm very accurate with it. So if I had to type out like let's say a paper or a business plan, I have that skill to not only type and like formulate my thoughts, but also to make it look very business professional. My skill, on the other hand, is I was literally using a jigsaw this morning to cut out Spartan heads. And I am not very skilled at the jigsaw. Mr. Ray had to help me multiple times. And after I broke the blade twice, I started to sand instead because I could sand instead of actually do the jigsaw. So those are some things to think about. A skill is much different than a trait. So really looking at those. When we look at power and influence, that's another factor of a type of leadership. You never want to abuse your power as a leader. So power leadership is important for influencing your subordinates or your employees, but it's also for helping influence peers, supervisors, and other people. Many times our people of power sometimes will abuse their role of power, and they will guide or advise things that may not be as great of a thing to do. So sometimes you get your followers, and what you're being advised or what you're starting to believe in might not be for the better good of a group. So be very cautious if you have that power and you have the leadership power with it, to use your power for good, use your influence for good, and really make sure that what you're doing is positive as well. And then we look at something called behavioral leadership. And we'll get into behavioral leadership a lot more when we start talking about styles of leadership. But behavioral leadership is a type of leader that you are. So there's really three different ones that we really look at within this class. So it kind of goes along with what your traits are and what your skills are. So there's Theory X, which is very authoritative, where you will help and tell someone what it is that you're expecting them to do. So you divvy out all of your projects or things that you need to accomplish, and everybody is very well aware that you're the person in charge, so you have that power and you're telling them what to do. Where Theory Y is more of that democratic, where we decide together as a group what it is that everyone will do, and then we kind of divide and conquer. And then there's Theory Z, which is laissez-faire, which is very hands-off. So in that hands-off setting, you're going to go through and not pay as much attention, because I don't want to say that, but instead of like being hands off, you will give advice when advice is needed, but you'll really let your group do what they need to do until you need to kind of pull back and rein in and help guide a little bit more. So those are kind of the three big leadership styles that you have, and everyone has different behavioral leadership. So like some groups that I'm in, I'm very authoritative, where I say, this is what you're doing and this is who's going to do this. And we have due dates and everything else. Where sometimes I'm more democratic. So like we'll decide together what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And sometimes I'm a little laissez-faire, where it's up to you of what you want to do, and I'll help guide you, but unless I feel you're off the path, then I'm going to let you sometimes make those mistakes. So, and sometimes it just depends on the situation that goes along with it. The next one we look at is popularity leadership. Popularity leadership really is exactly what it is. It's when celebrities or group popularity contests kind of dictates who's in charge of a group. So, like if you really look up to, let's say, a celebrity, hopefully they're making good choices because they're a leader because of what their celebrity is. So I think of someone like LeBron James. LeBron James is a leader and looked at as a popular leader because he is phenomenal at basketball. But with that power that he's had, he's also done some pretty amazing things. He's built schools, he donates money, he goes in and talks to kids, like he does all of these things that goes along with it, which makes him an even better leader, but he wouldn't be as well known as what he is if it wasn't for the fact that he's a basketball superstar. So those are some things to kind of think about. The next one that we look at is that combination. So like I said, the combination leadership position is, we really use a lot of different ones. So sometimes you use your power and you have power within leadership. Sometimes it's you're popular and you get to use it based on your popularity. Sometimes we look at our skills. Sometimes we look at the type of behavioral leadership we are. So your Theory X, Theory Y, Theory Z, and we really build all of those together. And then by doing so, the hope or the goal is that you become the best leader that you possibly can be. And to be a good leader, a lot of times it's based on experience. The more experience you have of being a leader, the more things you get yourself involved in, the more opportunities you have, you'll be able to grow yourself as a person. And when we look at that growth, that's going to be a huge thing for everyone to be able to do as well. So I hope you enjoyed this. And learned something from it as well. Please check Canvas to see what comes next, and then I will see you in class. Thanks.